I am so ready to get on the road again. For some short visits. Oh, cool. We are live. Yay. Hey, folks that are tuning in, we're live. That's wonderful. Get your coffee. I'm yelling at everybody. We're live. There you go. Posted it. I shared it. Hey, everybody who's jumping in, good to see you. Grab some coffee. We'll start up in a minute. Slam on that like button, love button, curious eye button. And I'm not on mute. That was awesome. That's what happens when you're not on mute, Dan. You get to hear your own voice delayed. That was awesome. You listen to yourself on delay. Even better. Everybody, like I said, grab your coffee. I look good today. Look at me. Tobias, our producer in Stockholm. I look good today. My shirt's a little out of whack. But other than that, I like the hoodie, Dan. The hoodie looks nice.
I haven't gone to work out yet. So after this, the next thing on my to-do list is to work out.
Good for you. Good for you. For those
important, reinforcing good habits is more important now than ever.
Yes, that is so true. I built a gym in our garage for my kids. Hung a really big mirror up on a wall. Buying weights. Who would have thought? It's funny to see what is difficult, what consumer spending habits are like, besides toilet paper and Purell. Any type of workout gear is gone. The second you go to the store, I have two 20-pound dumbbells. That's all I could find. And I bought them like 2 weeks apart. That was the best I could do. So we're trying.
So we actually do Pilates with our Pilates instructor over Zoom. And we and you can't see it on camera, but we have all of our Pilates gear over there. And we put our laptop there and we do it on the floor, all of our mat work, a couple of days a week.
So for the folks again that are tuning in, Alex Sion from Citi. Love having Alex on, one of the brains behind Brett King's Movin' product. Who's there forever and a day. He was at Chase on their mobile side and now is on the Citi side. Alex, love having you in. Good seeing you. We got folks from Edinburgh joining on and London and everyone else. Hey, everybody. Let me know, one, where you're tuning in from. Dan, just so you know, yesterday we had folks from Pakistan, Istanbul, Ireland, the UK, Jacksonville, Florida, the wide world of fintech. It was wonderful. Thanks for coming in, folks. If you have questions, please stump Dan. That would make me so happy because Dan, unfortunately, is the smartest individual I think that I've ever met in my life. I would love to stump Dan. If you know really good trivia about Hamilton, either Alexander Hamilton in real life or the play, since Dan is the one that introduced me to the play, please go there. I would love to stump him. Let's work on it. And with that, Dan, let's get going, all right? Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the 13th episode of Fintech Insider, the breakfast show US. Dan, you're lucky 13. This is the show for the folks at 11FS, bringing you interesting insights into the fintech and banking landscape. I am Sam Maul, 11FS Managing Director, North America. I'll be your host for the morning show. I'm waiting on a Starbucks coffee from my wife. As soon as I get that, I will be even more jazzed than I am right now. We are joined by Dan Kimerling, and Dan is sitting in his home in San Francisco at 7:30 in the morning. Dan, I love you for that. How you doing this morning?
I'm great. I love getting up early. I don't mean that. Wow. I mean that with great sincerity. I would much rather get up early than not. So the early bird gets the worm.
That is true. I think you're our first, if I'm not mistaken, you're our first West Coast guest on this show. We've had Jill Castillo, who Dan and I know and we love, in Oklahoma. I think she was the farthest west. So now I think you win. So good on you.
Well, you got to get somebody from Hawaii. To make it much more complicated.
The actor who stars in Outlander is writing this out in Hawaii, and his name is Sam, and my wife would love me forever if I could get him on. So Sam from Outlander, I don't know your last name. I'll reach out to you, buddy. You come on. We'll get you on, and we'll do the show. God, our numbers would be awesome if I could pull that out. Not that you're not lovely. Not that you're not lovely.
They would be way better if you had.
God, yeah. We would turn my camera off and just going, that lovely, lovely man. Dan Kimerling, everybody, give you a quick introduction for him. He's the co-founder, managing partner at Deciens Capital. Man, a long, illustrious life in fintech as a company founder. Went through an acquisition with Silicon Valley Bank, so has worked and led open banking at Silicon Valley Bank, for an example, and now his latest venture, if you will, is Deciens Capital. So I have known Dan for years. He, again, is easily one of the smartest people I know in the space, also one of the nicest people I know in the space, and also tried to get me to run for office in Florida. Did not happen. Dan, I love you.
I think you'd be a great elected official, Sam. Certainly better than some of the ones we have currently.
Yeah, well, we didn't go there. So again, folks, if you want to ask questions, please do. And Shabir, I know I have no idea why my internet is so good today, but thank you for noting that in the comments. So with that, let's dive right in. Again, you have questions, ask, okay? But let's start, Dan, with your latest venture, what you're doing and why you started it, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so before working on Deciens, I had started 3 different startups, all venture-backed, all with good exits. And one observation I had was that while there's a lot of capital at the early stage for startups, very little capital was focused on fintech. So that kind of led to this process of creating a fintech-focused seed fund, which is where we are today. And I've now led 9 transactions over the last 3 years. And I've also done a couple growth transactions off the platform, and continue to look for new and exciting fintech companies, kind of at that very early stage where I can get heavily involved and help build what I think will be some enduring businesses.
Yeah, I love having folks on that have gone through the process of starting companies, that understand what it's like. I think the experience, I would think with the different companies that you invest in and look with, that experience of being through this multiple times is priceless at this point.
It certainly gives you a lot of empathy for the founder experience. And it kind of gives a certain credibility when you have to have hard conversations.
Yeah, you already touched on my favorite word. I've been screaming about empathy nonstop. I think for 13 episodes of how, especially now, I was just on a call earlier with a friend in Toronto, works at Facebook on the marketing and banking side of Facebook, and we're both saying the same thing. What we're going through now, there's certain components that feel like 2008, but so many that don't, right? And from an industry standpoint, banks, for example, can really come out of this looking like heroes to some point, if they embrace that concept of empathy, if they embrace that, doing the right thing. And I would say the same for any company that's out there, any fintech company, any company, period. I don't care what industry you're in.
I mean, I think the scenario we're living through is so exogenous, so outside of the realm of that, so I'm not an epidemiologist, and so I'm sure there were very smart people who kind of had gamed this out and kind of like knew that this was a possibility, but this was not a possibility in my experience, in my worldview. And it's so outside of the realm of what I thought was possible. And I think that in times like this, we tend to look at what has worked in the past. And that is, I think, at best, a rough guide.
Yeah.
At best, a very rough guide. And it's, I think, as we should not be wedded to what has worked in the past. We should be wedded to what we think will work best now. And, so much of the way financial services in the United States work works today was through the creation of Dodd-Frank and the CFPB and the various GSEs, et cetera, that were created as a result of the 2007-2008 global financial crisis. And while I have a lot of respect for all the policies and practices that were put into place, I think we have to look at what is the spirit and intent of those practices rather than always being governed by the strict letter of the law, so to speak.
Dan and I, so for folks that don't know Dan and have been watching me for 13 days, one, I apologize for my behavior. Yeah, it's not going to change. Don't know what to tell you. But the fun thing with Dan, Dan and I, we don't get to see each other in person near enough. But when we do, we can sit for hours at a time, and we will touch on every topic that exists: philosophy, politics, technology. I mean, you take your pick. And that's what I like about you, Daniel. You're well-rounded, and your interests are well-rounded.
Thank you.
It's that, and I'll touch on this. So this obviously is coming out from left field. I think that's something that is being debated a ton now, because you look over the past, I'll say 20 years, this emphasis on STEM, right? On engineering and mathematics and science, which is incredibly important. But the balance side of that, the liberal arts side of it, which you and I both love, the arts period. Dan, you're a big supporter of the arts in San Francisco. You and your wife, aren't you? I mean, would you touch on that real quick?
I wouldn't say big. We do what we can to support our community, and arts is one part of that. I mean, I think, Sam, part of this is you can teach people content, or you can teach people how to think. And there is definitely higher return on investment to teach people content, without a doubt. But the problem is, how durable is that content? Some content is timeless. But especially in rapidly developing fields like science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, it seems to me that the content doesn't have a very long shelf life. And so if you believe that the rate of change is increasing, which I do, then what we want to do is teach people, give people the tools so that they can learn the content for themselves on demand. And the internet is amazing for that, Wikipedia, for example, being the most obvious example. But the idea that, I'm a big believer that thinking about thinking is a very useful activity, whereas I'm not sure that, that's a perhaps abstract idea. As far as
writing that down, I like that. Yeah, thinking about thinking.
Yeah, and as far as the arts go, it just strikes me that, well, there are two things. One is the reason why you live in a place like San Francisco is for the heterogeneity of the community that you're in, like the artists, musicians, public sector, private sector, social sector, right? It all has to work together in this complex ecosystem. So that's like one observation. And, I think there's also this aspect, and I think we've kind of lost it a little bit in the last 20 years, where there's a responsibility of those who have been who've been economically successful to engage in philanthropic related pursuits. And I think about, institutions of higher education, institutions of health and welfare. I think about institutions of arts and entertainment. I mean, we need philanthropic dollars to support those institutions, institutions of spiritual pursuits, yada, yada, yada. And so I think it's extremely important. There's a responsibility that people who've been economically successful have to to support these kinds of organizations.
So we already got.
Especially in times of financial distress, like we're living through at the moment.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and that's what makes, to me, San Francisco slightly unique. I mean, Dan knows this. I took my youngest daughter, Alex, who's 17, to San Francisco back in November. Good friend of ours, Scarlett Seaver, had actually hooked us up with great backstage tickets from a cast member, and so we were able to go see Hamilton, the play, in San Francisco. Awesome cast, by the way, but spend 2 days traveling the city. And it was fantastic for Alex because she learned a ton. We got to go down to Menlo Park. We met with the Robin Hood Snacks podcast folks, did a podcast with them. And Alex got to jump in then, so she got to see the Robin Hood HQ. She got to see what Menlo Park looked like. And then San Francisco, and even go across and take the ferry, across in the morning. And in that experience, she saw the success that the city has seen, and she saw the issues that have arisen over the past 20 years, right? The homelessness, for example, the wealth disparity that's taken place. And so, again, another reason I love you, Daniel, is you don't ignore that, right? It's part of who you are. You understand it. You've lived through it. And you've seen it more than just San Francisco. You're a Chicago guy, right? I get that right? Chicago originally. So, this isn't something that is unique to just San Francisco. It tends to just be amplified for what you see, I think, in my opinion.
Well, it's very clear to me that, or what I've read would strongly suggest that the current crisis is amplifying privilege rather than kind of, it's going to really amplify privilege in a way that I think is likely to be toxic.
Yeah, I agree. That's a conversation I've been having, with multiple people now, is, some of the learnings, what we're going to see coming out of this. Although we do have a great question, and I'm actually, Dan, by the way, as soon as the social distancing ends, I'm already setting up some meet and greets for you. But Sid Rahar, I love this guy. He's been on every single one of these shows. I believe he's in San Francisco. He's a software engineer and founder. Always asks great questions. So here you go, Daniel. One for you as a former company founder and what you're doing now. The heart of startup success is to carefully define an MVP, a minimal viable product, for those that don't know that. But how do you do this in a time of MVP, maximum volatility period? Love you, Sid Rahar. And how are you advising your portfolio companies in this regard? Where are you telling them to focus, Dan, right now?
Well, so two thoughts. I'm not sure that MVP is, I think MVP is a tool or a tactic, a strategy that one uses within a broader framework.
Yep.
So let's maybe think about what that framework is for a second. The framework is, how do you build a capital efficient, highly scalable, highly defensible, capital efficient business? I think that's the goal, at least for venture-backed technology companies. There are different goals for other kinds of companies, but for venture-backed technology companies, that's the goal. MVP is a part of that. And I would say that MVP is actually, to go further, a question around, are we coming to market with a compelling value proposition? That's the question. MVP is an expression of a question, and the question is our value proposition compelling? And the most compelling value propositions are seemingly timeless. You building a value proposition merely on the basis of short-term COVID-related volatility seems unwise.
Yeah.
Certainly, changing consumer sentiment is going to amplify the is going to amplify certain resonance on certain value propositions and diminish the resonance of other value propositions. But that will change as consumer sentiments always change, like in the winds blow and these sorts of things.
Amen.
So, oh, you got your Starbucks there.
Yeah, you like that? My massive Starbucks. I'm on Zoom calls for the rest of the day.
Excellent. So that's how I would think about it. And that building an MVP is a question of validating the resonance of your value proposition. And so that's like one response I would have.
Yeah.
The second question is, what am I advising my portfolio companies? I think that in general, startups only really have two phases. They have identified and demonstrated a resonant value proposition that can be profitably brought to market. If you're doing that, keep doing that. In fact, oftentimes I would argue that your economics are probably better now because there's less competition for talent. There's less competition in advertising channels, et cetera, et cetera. And if you haven't found a resonant value proposition, keep working on finding a resonant value proposition. And now is a great time to invest in product and engineering because the costs of product and engineering are seemingly going down after 12 plus years of going up. And that would be broadly true in any economic moment that find product market fit. If you have not found it, keep working on finding it. If you have found it, run like hell. That's basic.
Yep. Sidrahar said he's taking notes like crazy right now. Good news, folks. We're taking every single one of these, putting out on the 11FS YouTube channel and a playlist. So Sidrahar, I think you could hit like YouTube transcript. If I remember right, my daughter showed me that yesterday, how she's doing school. So you should be good to go. Another good question. Derek Sutton at Autobooks. Love Derek. Dan, what sector, verticals, or financial services are you really looking at from an investment standpoint, especially coming out of the pandemics, like open banking, data, digital self-service, payments, et cetera? What are the ones that really pique your interest now?
Well, I'll say I've not met anybody from the Autobooks team, but I've heard incredible things about the company. So,
there you go. They're really good. Yeah, I will flat out say that they're really good.
I've heard incredible things. So that's I think for me, I don't take I think broadly you can use a top-down mental model of the world to create a kind of sectoral map. I've not personally found that a very useful exercise. I mean, I know a lot of people who find that an exceptionally useful exercise. I don't personally find it a very useful exercise. I tend to find a bottoms-up approach more impactful for me. And that approach has certainly, my friend just texted me that he is watching this show and giving me a hard time about my beard.
You look lovely. Don't listen to him.
Thank you.
You look good.
Thank you.
You look good.
So I don't find that I don't find top-down very helpful for me. I find a bottoms-up approach much more helpful, and that really starts with founders. Founders are the ones who are committing their heart and soul, sweat, blood, and tears to these businesses, and so really, I tend to be in a more reactive state relative to founders. Founders are the ones who are living closer to the future, that have unique purchase on the problems. It's my job to enable them and to continue to support their efforts, hopefully over a many-year period, to build enduring businesses. So that's like a long-winded way of saying I'm not really sure what sectors are interesting right now. I think it's much more for me a question of what are founders passionate about, and can we get aligned there? The last couple investments I've done. I made an investment in the insurance sector, which I'm happy to talk about at a high level. I recently made an investment in P2P money movement company. I also have recently done an investment in the neobanking space. But in a given year, kind of one of the downsides of how I work is that in a given year, I'll entertain somewhere on the order of 600 pitches to only do 2 to 4 new investments. So there are amazing founders that I'd love to work with, but just oftentimes the timing doesn't work out. And I think the other thing I'm sensitive to right now is that in a world where you can't meet people in person, the length of time it takes for an idea to gestate and for an investor to get conviction and do diligence and really come to have a sense of who these people are is getting longer, not shorter.
Yeah.
So I'm also, that's something I'm not insensitive to.
So for everybody who's asking questions, my producer is pinging me in Slack. It's hilarious. Dan, I have been great about constantly going over time because it's only supposed to be 30 minutes. And so I just pinged her and I go, look, I got like 5 questions I have to get to from the audience that are being asked. Like Paul Oberman, great question. Michael, another great question. But I've actually got to go do an interview in 2 minutes. Believe it or not, Dan, I got to get on the phone with Plaid, which sucks. Here's what I'm going to tell everybody. I said this at the beginning, and I mean this. I know a lot of sharp people, Alex Sion, Jane Barrett, Paul Oberman, who are watching this, really smart people that know this space well. In my top 5, I always put Dan, and I'm not kissing up to Dan. He just knows that. What I love about you, Dan, is you take your time to think through your response and actually provide value when you do that, and insights from what you've gone through. So folks, I hate to say it, we're out of time. The questions that you asked, I'm going to ping them over to Dan, and he's going to give you his answers.
Or find me on Twitter. You know, I'm pretty active on Twitter.
We'll put those out there. They're too good. Yeah.
Right. Find me on Twitter, and I'm happy to engage that way.
And we're going to put right after this. What I'm going to do is copy these and ping them to Dan and copy the people that asked. They're so good. It's like a masterclass. It's like going to Y Combinator in 30 minutes. That's what I'll say, folks. I am so sorry. We've run out of time. I hate doing that. Follow Dan on Twitter. Reach out to him on LinkedIn. Connect. If you're in San Francisco, once we get past this, grab a coffee. Have some black tea. Evidently, Dan likes to get up early in the morning. So good for you. As for me, I'm Sam Mall at Twitter, at 11FS. Ping us with folks who you want to see and talk to and who you'd like to have on the show. Next week's shows are ridiculous. On Monday, we got the head of policy for Cabbage. That's going to be on Tuesday. My friend John Hope Bryant, who's from Operation Hope, who's that's going to be like going to church. Wednesday, we go into co-founders of Nova Credit. Thursday, Jen Tesher. Oh, Dan, we love Jen Tesher from the Financial Health Network in Chicago.
And Misha and Nikki from Nova. Love them too. So
absolutely love them. Then Friday, good friend of mine, John Wash from Casasa, based out of Austin. So next week is absolutely crazy with guests. Folks, thank you so much for joining. I really mean it. We appreciate this, the community that's been built up on these, the questions that you ask. Alex, Jane, Paul, everybody, thanks for joining us. Sorry to cut this one short. If I don't get to the other interview, my producer in London will absolutely throttle me. So, folks, again, thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
The one time, Daniel, I'm not allowed to go over. Damn it.
It's okay.